This is not history. This is memory. And tonight, you are Theodora. The city is burning. 30,000 people are dead in the streets outside. Your husband, the Emperor of Rome, is standing at the harbor window with a ship waiting. You tell him no. You were not born in this palace. You were born in a circus. But to understand why a woman raised in poverty refuses to run when every advisor in the room is ready to flee, you have to go back to the girl who was never supposed to be anyone. You were born around 500 AD in Constantinople. Your father is a bear-keeper at the Hippodrome, the massive chariot racing stadium that also serves as the city's de facto political arena. He dies when you are 5 years old. Your mother remarries quickly because she has to. Survival in this city, at this level of society, runs entirely on whether you can secure a position. She petitions the faction that controlled your father's job to give it to her new husband. They refuse. Someone else gets the position. So your mother does the only thing available to her. She dresses you and your sisters as suppliants and sends you into the Hippodrome during a public event, begging the crowd for mercy. You are 5 years old, kneeling in a stadium of thousands of strangers, performing desperation to keep your family fed. You file this away. Performance and survival are the same thing. You will not forget this lesson. By your teens, you are working in Constantinople's theatrical world, which in the 6th century is not what the word suggests today. Actresses occupy one of the lowest social ranks in Roman society, legally grouped alongside the registered. The theater of this era includes comedy, mime, and forms of public performance that respectable Roman citizens watch but refuse to associate with socially. You become known, not for subtlety. Ancient sources, written later, mostly hostile, describe your performances as deliberately scandalous, designed to provoke exactly the reaction your economic survival requires. One contemporary writer, Procopius, will later document your early life in detail so hostile that historians still debate how much of it is accurate reporting and how much is character assassination dressed as history. He had reasons to hate you. He wrote after your death when criticizing you carried no risk. What's certain? You are poor. You are using the only currency available to a woman with no family position, and you are doing it without illusions about what it costs you socially. In your late teens, you travel to North Africa as the companion of a provincial official named Hesebulus. The relationship ends badly. He reportedly abandons you in Libya. You make your way back toward Constantinople essentially alone, traveling through Alexandria. This part of your life is documented thinly. But something happens in Alexandria that ancient and modern historians both note as a turning point. Some sources connect you to Monophysite Christian circles there, a theological movement considered heretical by the established church, but one with deep roots and serious political weight in the eastern provinces.
The text is clear. It
You
cannot
arrive
be.
back in Constantinople a different person than you left, less interested in performance, more interested in something else entirely. Theology, politics, the actual mechanics of how power moves through this empire. You take up wool spinning near the palace, a respectable trade, a quiet life by the standards of where you started. This is not retirement. This is positioning. Justinian first notices you sometime in the 520s. He is the nephew and adopted heir of the current emperor Justin I, a former soldier who rose from nothing himself, which makes him an unusual sort of person to fall for a former actress with your specific reputation. He is not unusual. He is calculating something most powerful men never calculate correctly. Roman law explicitly forbids senators from marrying actresses. This law exists precisely to prevent what Justinian wants to do. He does not accept the obstacle. He has his uncle, the emperor, change the law. Think about the audacity required here. An emperor altering centuries of Roman legal tradition because the woman he wants to marry happens to be legally barred from marrying him. You marry in 525 AD. When Justin dies and Justinian becomes emperor in 527, you become empress. The girl who knelt in the Hippodrome begging for mercy now rules the empire that owns it. Here is what history does not tell you about your role as empress. It does not tell you that Justinian elevates you to genuine co-ruler, not symbolically, but legally. Officials swear oaths to both of you. Foreign ambassadors address correspondence to both of you. Your name appears alongside his on legal documents and new construction. It does not tell you that you maintain an independent court, independent advisors, and an independent network of intelligence separate from your husband's, built, historians believe, on the relationships you formed during your years moving through the theatrical and ecclesiastical worlds that respectable senators never entered. It does not tell you that you use your position to push protections for women that no Roman administration had attempted before. New laws restricting forced prostitution, expanded rights for women in divorce, death penalty extended to rape, a residence, the metanoia, repentance, funded specifically to give former sex workers an alternative source of income and housing. You did not forget where you came from. You legislated for it. Theodora, Chas II. January 532 AD. Constantinople is governed, like most major Roman cities, through chariot racing factions, the Blues and the Greens. These are not just sports teams. They are organized political and social blocs with real street power, and tensions between them have been building for years over taxation, religious policy, and basic competence of the administration. A routine execution of rioters from both factions goes wrong. 2 condemned men, one blue, one green, survive a botched hanging. The crowd, suddenly finding common cause, demands clemency. Justinian refuses to respond clearly. This is the mistake. The factions unite. Blues and Greens, who normally hate each other, combine into a single mob with a single chant. Nika, victory. For 5 days, Constantinople burns. Major buildings, including the original Hagia Sophia, are destroyed. The mob doesn't just want clemency anymore. They want a new emperor entirely, and they have a candidate, Hypatius, a nephew of a previous emperor, who is essentially dragged out of his house and crowned in the Hippodrome whether he wants it or not. By the 5th day, 30,000 people are dead in the streets. Justinian's government controls almost nothing outside the palace walls. This is the moment you walked into in the opening of this story. Justinian's advisors are unanimous. Flee. Take the treasury, take the ships docked at the harbor, and escape to a loyal province while the city tears itself apart. This is not cowardice by the standards of the era. It is the obvious, rational move. An emperor who survives can return. An emperor who is captured by a mob does not survive at all. You stand in the council chamber and refuse. Procopius records your words, and whether they are exact or reconstructed, the substance is consistent across multiple sources. You tell them that flight, even if it leads to safety, leads to a worse death than the one you might face by staying. The death of becoming nobody, a fugitive former ruler with no throne and no future. You tell them that royal purple makes the noblest burial shroud. You are not speaking from theory. You spent your childhood with nothing. You know exactly what it costs
How
to
dare
lose
you question
everything
my authority?
and still have to
This
survive
empire
the
will
loss. You are not going to let your husband choose that path while believing it is the safer one. Justinian, by every account, was moments from boarding that ship. Your refusal to leave is the single deciding factor that keeps him in the palace. What happens next is not magic. It's competent, ruthless execution of a plan that you and the loyal generals construct in hours. Justinian's general Belisarius, along with another commander named Mundus, still control elite troops loyal to the throne. The plan. Let the crowd in the Hippodrome finish crowning Hypatius. Let them believe they've won, and then seal the exits and send in soldiers. it works with brutal efficiency. The Hippodrome becomes a slaughter. Estimates of the dead that day alone range up to 30,000 more, on top of those killed in the preceding days of rioting. Hypatius is captured and executed, despite reportedly being an unwilling figurehead in the rebellion. The Nika Riots end. Justinian's throne is secure, not because he was strong, but because you refused to let the people in the room treat collapse as inevitable. Here is what the empire looks like, because that day went the way it did. Justinian rebuilds the Hagia Sophia, not the modest structure that burned, but the version that still stands in Istanbul today, one of the most significant buildings in architectural history, completed in under 6 years. Justinian commissions the Corpus Juris Civilis, the legal code that systematizes Roman law and becomes the foundation for legal systems across Europe for the next 1,000 years. Belisarius, secure in his position because the throne survived, goes on to reconquer North Africa and parts of Italy, the largest Roman territorial recovery in a century. None of this happens if Justinian boards that ship in January 532. The empire that produced the Hagia Sophia, the Justinian Code, and the last major reconquest of Roman territory exists because a woman who grew up begging for mercy in a stadium refused to let her husband do the same thing on a larger scale. You continue ruling alongside Justinian for another 23 years. You push religious policy that tries, with limited success, to bridge the gap between the Orthodox Church and the Monophysite communities you connected with in your youth. You continue advocating for women's legal protections. You maintain your independent intelligence network and your independent political relationships until the day you die. You die in 548 AD, likely from cancer. Justinian, by every surviving account, is devastated. He never remarries. He continues referencing your input on policy and legal matters for years after your death, as though still consulting someone in the room. He rules for 17 more years without you. Historians broadly agree his judgment, his political instincts, and his decisiveness all decline in your absence. The woman who saved the Roman Empire spent her childhood kneeling in a stadium, asking strangers for mercy. The same woman, 3 decades later, stood in a burning palace and told an emperor that running was the actual death sentence, that there was more dignity and more safety in standing still than in saving yourself by becoming nothing. She was right. The empire she saved produced law codes still studied today, and a building still standing 15 centuries later. History remembers her origins as a scandal. It should remember them as the reason she understood something the men in that council chamber didn't. That losing everything once teaches you exactly what is and isn't worth running from. Was Theodora a scandalous opportunist who married her way into power? Or was she the only person in that palace with the lived experience to know that surviving collapse with nothing is worse than standing your ground? Leave a comment. I want to know what you think. If this story kept you watching, hit the like button, subscribe, because the next video is about another woman who built something extraordinary out of nothing, and what it cost her to keep it. This is not history. This is memory, and the questions never really close.